All right, I'm doing this video because, wow, excuse me. There is a couple of videos I've done. Be sure to join the Discord down in the description box below. There's a couple of videos that I have done, and it talks about, why are certain things the way that they are when we're looking at just downtown um, Tacoma, right? Had someone who I think is from here, and they moved away and they came back, and they were a little bit upset um, with what I said about, or what I've been saying about Tacoma, and they felt, I guess, as if I was kind of attacking it or something like that, attacking Tacoma. Some people get really upset when you start to talk about their city, right? But one of the things I like to do is make sure that everybody is aware of the pros and the cons. That you just don't focus on all the pros and you skip the cons. Because I've had people say, but what he won't tell you is this, which isn't true. I don't glorify Tacoma and I don't talk down at Tacoma either. Because I feel like there's really no point in doing that. I can't find the exact article now, but I can remember a lot of what's about. And one of the deficiencies that Tacoma has, and this is just a fact, it's not a say that Tacoma doesn't have anything. It has a lot of great things for the city of its size. However, if you sit behind on complacency just because it's your city, that's when cities start to fail. Because again, some people feel that their city is too big to fail, and that's not true. There's plenty of cities that can tell you exactly what's going on and how they got to where they got to. It's a slow decline, but it does happen. And certain things make a city vibrant. It doesn't matter about how much investment you have. It's good that we do have them. But if you don't have certain things, you really don't have a vibrant downtown. And that is the case with Tacoma. It is not a vibrant downtown. Now, do I think that it can get to that point? Yes. But vibrancy is not one of them. Now, with that said, there are certain things that can make downtown a lot more vibrant. One would be, in my opinion, and I've seen a lot of other cities do this, you have to take what other cities and other areas have done and you have to weigh them to see if it would work for here. And there's no reason to think that it wouldn't, but something like a farmer's market or a public market building would be amazing, because having an actual public market where people go into and shop and do whatever they need to do, Tacoma lacks that when we're looking at downtown. Now, we can't point at Ruston and all these other places. And I understand not everybody understands business the way that I do, and there's other people that know business by far more than I do. But some people use these kind of distant places and they say, well, what about this? Well, what about that? And that really does not count, right? It really doesn't count. Point Ruston is way over there on the, where we're looking at the city. It's over on the northwest side, right? We're talking about downtown. People aren't going to drive out to Ruston whenever they're working downtown and doing the stuff that they're doing downtown. And so what you have to understand is, and I've worked for big companies before, you can't take an hour and a half to be driving in a car someplace. Tacoma's a very car-centric city. What is that? Hold on. It's the kid's hamster. It's got stuff in its wheel, and so it's moving around making that sound. But you have to be able to not become such a car-focused central city. And that is really what Tacoma is. A lot of cities are like that. But we have to kind of understand that if you don't work downtown and you don't live downtown, this is one of these points that people may not quite understand, because they're looking at it from a different viewpoint. If you live over by the mall, you have plenty of options to actually go to. If you live in different parts of the city, you have different options. But downtown, given the amount of development and focus, which has the most money right now poured into it, than any other section of the city, it does lack critical things that we need. A grocery store is one of them. We need one. Now, people have said, well, it's not big enough, and that's just not true. When you look at the past IGA grocery store that located there, and I can tell you kind of the reason why I get a little upset with the grocery stores that overload and flood places like Gig Harbor, which eventually that's going to backfire because you can't have that many grocery stores in just a small area with a small population. But the IGA here was battling a lot of different issues at one time. For one, very large building. For two, if you look at the market rate cost to have a space downtown, it's extremely expensive. It was on Pack Avenue, which is the most expensive corridor for commercial properties in downtown, really. So you're dealing with that. You're dealing with a work population that went there all the time, but that grocery store kind of came at the wrong time. And so the big issue was not that there was not enough people to keep it going and keep it running. It was the size of the grocery store, which was a little bit too big for downtown, and the extremely high cost. And one of the big things that I've been really beating the drum on is the cost of retail space here in Tacoma. Now, people are going to set things at market rate, no question about that. But some of this is leading to a lot of issues. Not only do we see it here, we see it in Seattle as well. I mean, there's only so much money, and everyone's trying to treat it as if everybody has Amazon money, and that's just not the case. These grocery stores are operating on a margin. They have to bring in a lot of food. We take for granted where all this stuff comes from. It's expensive. The shelf life of food is very short. When we're talking about fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, they've already been picked days and days ago. And then by the time you get them, they're at the very last stages of their life. So if they hit the grocery store shelf, they're probably 4 or 5 days old. And then hopefully someone will buy them within a short amount of time. That's why fruits and vegetables go quick. And when you're talking about the environment that we're in, where it's always kind of damp, even in the best of buildings, bananas and things like that don't last super long like they did back when I lived in other places. So there's a lot of different things that go into it. It's not just a cut and dry situation, but downtown Tacoma is absolutely big enough to support a grocery store. Now, why am I saying that? And I'll go on and talk about other things, but I wanted to address that issue. I lived in a town growing up called Smith Grove, Kentucky. It is a town that does not have a red light. All it has is stop signs. It has a big, huge truck stop. And up until 3 years ago, it never had one factory. It's just a little garden farm community that is 14 miles from Bowling Green, Kentucky, which is a bigger city of about 70,000 people. Smith Grove's population has not grown at all much. The last 30, 40 years, it's always been about 700 and something people total. Okay, if you throw in Oakland, Kentucky, which is about 200 or 300 people, let's just say that area, because people may go from Oakland to Smith Grove to buy groceries, let's just say that whole area, you're talking about 1,200 people. Let's just say 1,200 people, and there's an IGA grocery store right there. And the reason why the IGA grocery store does very well is not due to the population, because there's people shop every day, obviously, but we're talking a very small micro community compared to downtown Tacoma, way drastically different. And the reason why it's able to survive is because the building itself is not expensive. For one, the people who own that built it themselves. Land, there's tons of land, tons and tons and tons of land, right? Everybody in that town can have a 10-acre plot for their house, and still there's plenty of land. So that's the difference. So it's not due to anything other than the fact that Tacoma, the cost is just so expensive. So a developer is going to have to pretty much bring a grocery store here. This segues into what this video was mainly about. A developer will have to bring their own grocery store here, similar to what happened in Albuquerque when they built their mixed-use building. The city offered land to a developer, which is what Tacoma should do, and say that you can build here. We're going to give you a major discount on the land. I think they may have given them the land, But you have to have a grocery store and a pharmacy here, period. You can never close it down. You can never say, well, it didn't do well. None of that. You have to keep a grocery store here for however many years, well over 10 years. And so then they built apartments above it. Downtown Albuquerque, again, does not compare to downtown Tacoma. Just it doesn't hold a candle to it. Downtown Tacoma, even though it's half the size of Albuquerque, its downtown is much more vibrant. So I bring all that up because it's going to have to take a developer putting one in, because it's not going to happen organically in Tacoma. The perception is just so negative. And someone had made up a very good point, or made a very good point by saying, because the past grocery store failed, other grocery stores look at that as a warning sign, and for the next few years you probably will never see a grocery store. And I agree with you. The only way you're going to have a grocery store is if a very small micro grocery store comes in, 10,000 to 20,000 square feet, or if a developer brings one in. That segues over to Tacoma Trax. Tacoma Trax is a proposed mid-use multi-floored residential building. It's going right in over there by Freight House Square, across the street from it. This is a true transit-oriented development, because right outside of its steps are not only the two large free parking garages that are sitting there, but also the Tacoma Link light rail stop is right there in front of it. And then directly in front of that, across the street, is the Sounder Station, Amtrak, and all of that. It is truly right at that center point, and it's something that's very unique. This building, of course, is going to have about 100 and something units and all of that, a rooftop terrace and different views of the city. That's great. But the big point that I'm excited about is the fact that it will address one of those issues I mentioned. Now, albeit this is in the Dome District and not downtown, but I'll take it. It is going to have a two-story farmers market, indoor and outdoor farmers market. Now, this is great. Now, it would be better if this project would have been in downtown and they were proposing this. It would have been even better. But again, I will take it, absolutely. And here's the reason why this is going to be a very unique thing. One, it allows a farmer's market to operate throughout the entire year. Food and stuff like that will be able to be purchased there, and it's a great investment. The developers are coming from Seattle. And so this type of project is going to be huge. Now, the reason why it says it's going to be huge is because Freight House Square, which is a gigantic long building, has a lot of different businesses in it, micro businesses, right? The Painting Panda Pottery Studios in there, amongst others. It's Tacoma's only food hall. We actually have one food hall. It's in Freight House Square. And so then you have all these other different shops. A lot of people who used to go to Freight House kind of stopped going for many different reasons. Some people say it's a little scary over there, a little sketch, a little this, a little that. They don't like the business of the building management, all these different things, and they're valid concerns. However, that has slowly started to change, and you're starting to see small incremental fixes there at that building, and more people are coming to the building, mainly because of businesses like mine. I hate to brag, but it's true. Bringing people here, because this is a type of business that you don't see every day in Tacoma. There's not a lot of pottery studios, paint yourself pottery studios. So that's part of it. But when you have two areas where you have a festive market style setup, the way that Freight House Square kind of is, and because it offers all of the like furnishings and different things like that. You have antique shops there, you have some clothing shops there, you have some like a gift shop type place there. You have a little bit of everything, right? A little bit of everything. So people like that kind of, they can shop and look around. With this other building, it's bringing in a huge component which allows for doors to roll up and down. People can actually sit there and eat. People can go and shop at the various different vendors that will probably be there. And the main thing is it being a farmer's market. This is what is needed in Tacoma. Now, how this will kind of help downtown, and the reason why these developers have decided to put all this here, is because of the Tacoma Link light rail. I'll go back to that, because a lot of people have made fun of that little streetcar or a trolley. But to be honest with you, it has done a massive amount of good for Tacoma. It may have taken some time, but it is one of the reasons why there are so many projects being developed right now close to the line, because developers feel like this thing is only getting bigger in terms of its size and importance. And so they feel like this is a strong bet, right? A very strong bet to connect you where you got to go. And given the fact that Tacoma really did do this right, it is the entire transit hub right there for the South Sound is right there near Freight House Square. So this developer, imagine whenever the Seattle Link, the big light rail system, the true light rail system comes to Tacoma, more than likely either it will straddle over that road, which is where right in front of Freight House Square, right in front of where the garages are, right in front of where Trax is. They could build an elevated deck. Cars can still travel underneath the road and all of that. If that's the case, you have a transit stop hovering above the ground, right? Gives you kind of vibes of Chicago or Philadelphia, right? That's one option. The other option is to tear down a lot of Freight House Square and build it all within that, right? Regardless of where they end up putting this actual station, imagine coming out and seeing the massive amount of people at this building, this farmer's market. Because the way that they're planning it, and they're going to have a plaza which connects to the parking garage. They're doing a lot of great things, streetscape improvements. And so all of these things lead to a much more festive environment. So imagine what that's going to look like. The other big part of this, and they have kind of broken ground because they cleared out a lot of stuff. Pierce Transit sold them that property, which they owned it. And so they're going to start working on it relatively soon. So it should be done in no time. But the reason why I say this is hopeful for downtown, and there's these projects like this that kind of help downtown get by, is because of the Link Light Rail system. Now, this gives people who work in the offices downtown a reason to go to the Dome District, because one of the big issues, and in a video I did talking about the grocery store that we do have, which is Thriftway Stadium grocery store, and I said shout out to them, and I celebrate them because they took a chance on being somewhat close to downtown, even though they're not technically downtown. However, it is a very expensive place. That grocery store is pretty pricey. So if you live in Hilltop, a lot of people there, income-wise, cannot afford to shop there. A lot of people just in general in that area can't afford to shop there. And even people who can afford to shop there may not want to necessarily do so because it can be kind of pricey. They're looking for a better bargain. This kind of does that because now all of downtown, which is a food desert, is hopefully going to have some sort of relief once this building gets completed, because you'll have a farmer's market. The problem with the farmer's market we have now is it's just a one day a week type of thing, and for a few months at a time. This actually helps push that a little bit further to where people who are, living downtown, for example, they can just take a train ride down a stop or two from downtown, and then they're actually in this area. They literally get right off at that stop and they're able to go into that farmer's market. And so this is one of those things that I think is really important, because as the Dome District starts to build up, and there are a lot of projects in the works, many I've mentioned here, but as that starts to develop and build up, the pressure for more options for people to have in terms of food items are going to only increase. So again, this is not to bash Tacoma. That's silly, right? I love Tacoma. Love Tacoma. I mean, there's no question I love Tacoma. There's a lot of things I'm doing here in the city. We've invested in the city. We're definitely establishing our roots here without question. But with that said, there's a lot of things you can do to improve the city. And it's just like you owning your home. You love your home. There's things you would do to improve it. You just don't say, whatever. This is my home, so I'm not going to do any improvements. No, there's improvements that need to be done. And so that's the case with Tacoma. There's a lot of things that need to be done and needs to be addressed. Now, people will bring up things like homelessness and this, that, and the other. There's not a city of size that doesn't have homelessness issues. Not to say we should ignore it, but those are things that hopefully we have the right people in place that can kind of help mitigate some of the issues that are going on. Because along that street, there is a homeless encampment right in there. Now, in downtown, there is not one to my knowledge. You have some people who freak out as soon as they see one person who's homeless and they judge. This is America, right? But they're distraught, right? As soon as they see someone that looks a little dirty or maybe whatever, they assume that this person's homeless. I know a guy who's a multimillionaire who dresses very bad. Okay. I mean, he's got rags on, dirty, dingy, but loaded. He pulls out his wallet, and his wallet is like, so this is how thick my wallet is, right? He pulls out his wallet, and it can't even close. Have you seen those old dudes with wallets that are like a big old ball? Yeah. Oh, I own that building over there, and this building, we thought about tearing it down, but he got money, right? But if you look at him, you would think that, oh, he's a homeless guy. So some of these people that people judge, most of the time they probably are homeless, but there's no reason to be afraid. And there's people who are saying that because there's a homeless issue in Tacoma, there won't be a grocery store. It's like, that's silly. Again. Sometimes I just shake my head. I'm like, okay, all right. Homelessness has nothing to do with that. If that was the case, nothing would get done. And again, most people who are watching this have a good shot at being homeless. It only takes one little event and that can happen, right? If you're middle class, there's not much that keeps you from being homeless. Your job firing away or whatever from being in that circumstance. So have a little bit of grace with people. But hopefully this project will get completed. It seems like it will. There's a developer that is wanting to put 2 buildings along that area as well, which is going to be very transformative. The Dome District is really, really, really going to change in the next few years. It is the hot spot. I kind of always felt that it would be, because just looking at downtown, there's still a lot of places to build, but it is becoming less and less. Let's also think about something too, because if you go back to Seattle in 1969, so about 10 years, 11 years before I was born, downtown Seattle was very sparse. You didn't see a lot of buildings. I mean, there was buildings and things like that. Don't get me wrong. But you had a lot of surface area parking lots, a lot of those, similar to what you see in Tacoma today. You see a lot of that. Are we that far behind Seattle? Yeah, I'd say we're probably a good 20 years behind where Seattle was, if not greater in some degree. But to be honest with you, if you look at the analytics, Tacoma is following what Seattle did back in the day. It's only doing it at a much faster clip. Does that make sense? So it's actually, the city itself, downtown Tacoma, almost had to be leveled with all of the bad, shoddy buildings that were down there along the waterfront, old warehouses and things like that. A ton of stuff. There's so much work that had to be done just to get it to where it is. So Seattle didn't have to go through that. It just literally had to manage all of the different proposed projects that were going up. Tacoma had a lot of issues it had to iron out, and still does. And so it had to go through and fix all of those. A lot of that has been done because of the University of Washington, Tacoma, and other groups that have actually come in and did that. But again, that would not have happened had you not had someone that says, look, I think that we're going to do that. It wasn't like you're going to get the city or something like that to just come in and make it happen. It takes someone saying, look, I want to see this through, and I got the ability to make it happen. And that is kind of what you're seeing with this Trax development, is that someone saying, obviously there's a need for a farmer's market. You know, they have a connection to downtown, which is where a lot of the people are going to be coming from. There's a student population that would be willing to come down. There's parking garages right there where people can park and safely walk to the space. They gauged a lot and analyzed this and said this is the perfect fit for the area. Out of all the projects downtown, including the Tacoma Town Center, this is one of them where I feel probably has my biggest interest, to be honest with you, just because of what its sole purpose of doing. Not only to provide housing, of course, but it's not just going to be a vacant retail hole that's there. They're literally proposing what they're going to do with it. And to me, there should be more of a push by the city to say the retail spaces you have below, you need to actively seek out and bring in retail places. Don't just have a retail space open. Bring in something. And so this project, we'll see what happens. But anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to join the Discord down in the description box below. Tell me what your thoughts are. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.